Hey everybody, welcome back to Comic Crow, part-time YouTuber, part-time occasional games journalist, and we have to talk about the situation happening with Helldivers 2 as Sony is making it mandatory to have a PlayStation Network account if you want to keep playing this game. Now, the reason why that's such a big deal is because it's going to affect you if you're playing on PC. And this is a change that has never been a requirement on any other Sony title that's been launched on PC. In fact, before this change was announced on Helldivers 2, the official page for the PlayStation Network actually stated that it's always optional if you play a Sony title on PC to have the PSN account. However, after this change was announced, they made a stealth update to their own page, which they said, well, on some games it's going to be required. So again, this is absolutely outraged many of the players of Helldivers 2, specifically on PC. And I'm going to give a lot of shit to the PlayStation player base on social media right now, because I personally understand, as a former PlayStation fangirl myself, that they're kind of used to getting the no loop treatment from Sony. But come on, the PlayStation Network is notorious for being one of the most unsecured platforms on all over the internet. They've gone through, I want to say, in the past, I don't know, since like 2011, the PlayStation 3 days, they've had more than 5 massive data breaches. In fact, last year they had 2 in which people's credit card information, meaning you were paying them money, that information got out to hackers. When I had my PlayStation 4, I don't want to say this, probably like 8 years back, my PlayStation account, or my PlayStation Network account, was hacked twice. And it stopped me from using services like my Funimation streaming. And I know Funimation's dead now, but yeah, it gets really annoying when they can hack into your account that easily, because none of your information is secure when you give it over to Sony. Now, real quick, this change is not an immediate change. If you have the game, it's not going to go into effect on you until May 30th. However, if you do not have the game and you are just buying it on Steam, it becomes effective on May 6th. So I don't imagine this is going to affect the player base too much until the 30th. And that's because you will only see this post on Steam if you're actually going to the community page, or you're active on social media and you're paying attention to what's going on. And I know that the majority of the players right now on PC are not on X. They're not going through, the official X account for Helldivers. So they're not going to see this until the day it's actually active. So we will wait and see what happens to the player base on May 30th. However, the Steam page is just brutalizing them. Like, if you go through the recent reviews, these are all from today. They're all negative, and they're all talking about the mandatory requirements from the PlayStation Network. In fact, this one, he posted, 7 massive data breaches of the PlayStation Network users' information. And this it just goes on and on and on. I'm actually scrolling up because I was looking at this earlier today. Actually, let me see. Can I get to a positive review? There are thousands and thousands and thousands of just negative reviews all in one day by the PC player base. And I've got to say, as much as I love this game and think that it's kind of a breath of fresh air for a lot of the players, because again, no microtransactions, it was only $40 to play it, and I had a lot of fun playing this on stream with a lot of different people. It feels like this is the end of this game, because if you're a PlayStation player, obviously this change doesn't really affect you. However, the majority of the player base is on the PC, and if those players stop logging in to play this game, the solo player queues to get into groups to go and, kill bugs or kill robots and stuff, well, those queues are going to get dramatically longer, which is going to lead to less players on the PlayStation. I think that won't be as big of an impact as what we're going to see with the PC players. I imagine the Steam numbers are going to drop dramatically. Again, right now, it's still managing more than 100,000 players daily, but I think it's going to go down by effectively more than half once this change goes into effect on May 30th. Now, I've seen this post, and there's a few reasons why Sony is making this change mandatory now. I think a large part of it is likely due to the backlash that Sony is getting for the perceived changes that is believed to be forced onto Stellar Blade by them, which includes censoring a couple of the outfits in the game. And we've seen a lot of people cancel their subscriptions to the service. I don't know if that's the driving factor, but I do think that this argument's pretty interesting because this person posted in a reply to the Helldivers official post. New Sony patent would auto-detect in-game harassment by using biometric data to read your emotions. The tech would allow Sony to take action on harassment without users needing to file a report. So essentially, because this game is cross-platform, if you're playing on Steam, right, and Steam doesn't deem your conduct to be harassment, well, if you're playing with a PlayStation player and they think it's harassment, or their game's biometric data believes that you are harassing them, Sony can then punish you even though you're playing on an entirely different platform and don't even agree to the rules that Sony has in place for their players. I think it's a massive overreach. I think that there's a good reason for PC players to be upset, especially if this is going to affect into Sony's new games. But the other thing I think is really just absurd here is the arguments from people that are clearly, PlayStation fangirls. Again, I used to be a part of that community, so I shouldn't judge too harshly, I guess. Who have been arguing that, well, it was clearly displayed. And I'll say this, as someone who bought the game, I never knew that this was a requirement. There is a small box on the Steam page, if you scroll down, that does say that you will have to have a third-party account. I didn't notice it when I bought the game, but, I'll take the L on that one. I'm an idiot. I should have probably read it a little bit clearer. And because, we all read through the full disclosures when we buy the game. It's not like this is something that you should probably have a pop-up before you purchase it telling you that it's a requirement. But when you first log into the game, you get this message saying, you need to link your Steam account in order to play the game. But there's also this big giant button that says you can skip that step, and it never says that it's going to be mandatory in the future. So I would say that causes a massive and obvious level of confusion to the point where you can clearly just accuse them of being misleading. And, well, I have heard people go, well, this is really just Sony is doing this. And I do think that there's a lot of truth to the idea that Sony is doing this, even though, again, the PlayStation Network is kind of notorious for letting their players' personal data get hacked and leaked out to the internet. We really need to talk about the community manager that the Helldivers 2 team has hired to represent them, because this guy is turning a bad situation into just an absolute firestorm, and he's just tossing gasoline all over it. So I've gone through this Spitz person's post on other subjects, and it's very clear over the past few years that they have tweeted and talked about how much they despise players, especially when players are complaining about a game. But this person, they're just saying this is going to kill Helldivers 2 on Steam, backpedal or lose your player base. The response isn't, hey, Sony's forcing us to make this change. We'll do what we can to keep our players happy. The response is, I thought you were refunding and leaving. Why would you, even if you think that the outrage is, BS, and you think that people are blowing it out of proportion, which, again, I do not think at all, why would you try to instigate people to like just come at you like this, and not you personally, because again, you're just like a dumblefuck community manager, but you're representing the company. So all the hatred is going to get directed right at Helldivers 2, when in reality, this is a change that Sony is forcing onto people. In fact, I mean, you could probably blame them for, you know, a good majority of those negative Steam reviews, because they then talk about how, listen, everybody's doing this. It only takes 2 minutes to do this. Why are you complaining? Well, again, because even though Ubisoft does this, which everybody complains about, even though Microsoft does this, which people still complain about, this was not something that you, like, it's not very clear when you buy the game that you are required to do this. As multiple people have stated, they had no idea that this is a requirement, because, again, there's a giant button that says, hey, you know, you can just skip this step. You don't have to do it. Why would you ever, as a PC gamer, give your personal information over to fucking Sony when Sony is really well known for not protecting people's personal data, right? It's beyond just that this was not a requirement when you buy the game. It's not just that you're not warned before buying the game that's a requirement. It's not just that even when you're logging in, it says you can skip it and it's not mandatory, and they don't say anything about how it'll be mandatory in the future. Right, when you're logging into that game, the account has zero use for a PC player. And again, it's never been a requirement on any of Sony's other titles. So why would I give my personal data to a company that is such like absolute human trash when it comes to how they treat your private data? So I don't personally know how this is going to progress moving forward. I think that Valve should step in and should allow people to get refunds on the game. I obviously the studio is going to be upset about that, but you know, this is something where I feel like potentially, you know, you're getting to those territories of things like class action lawsuits with how this was rolled out, especially when Sony themselves, prior to this change, was telling everybody that this was just an optional thing on all of their titles, and then after the change came out and did a stealth edit to their website. So I think you have a good case for this not being clear with this title, but also, like, again, we will see what happens on May 30th when every single player on PC is forced to make this change. I don't think, I mean, I think you're going to see some players who are not going to log in. Me personally, I will not be playing this game anymore until this change is reversed. If it's never reversed, that's fine. I have other games that I'm very far behind on that I'd much rather go and play. But we'll see what happens. Again, May 30th is when this change goes into effect for all players. And once it does, I think you're going to see the player base and the community completely disintegrate. So we'll see what happens with the concurrent player base in June and going into July and everything. But in my best judgment, PC gamers are not just going to bite the bullet, especially since this is being thrown on them after the fact, because, you know, again, PC gamers, just straight up, we have much higher standards than, you know, the console fangirls. I'm sorry for you PlayStation and Xbox gamers. Like, you're kind of used to getting, you know, like I said, that no loop treatment. But PC gamers, we're made of stiffer stuff. And we absolutely don't tolerate this underhanded garbage that Sony is forcing on us. So we'll see what happens, and we'll just have to stay tuned and you know, keep paying attention to it. If you're upset, drop a negative review on Steam. I mean, many people are doing that. And you can see the playtime, right? 127 hours on record, 44 and a half hours. When I heard someone like claim that it's a review bomb, and yeah, I can see some people have barely played that are, you know, dropping these comments, but most of these people, like, they played this game for a really, really, really long amount of time, and they're going in, they're dropping these comments just saying absolutely not, absolutely not, absolutely not. And I'm 100% with them. Abso-fucking-lutely not.